Welcome to the Cinema Cartography.
This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/cinemacartography. That's mubi.com/cinemacartography for a whole month of great cinema for free.
There is something disquieting about Oyasumi Pum Pum, Berserk, and Homunculus. Those are the type of manga you just can't stop reading, even though they are never easy to go through, even though they can break you. And although it's true that all those works have completely different tones and explore completely different genres, it is also true that they share a similar outlook into the depths of the human condition. They all explore, in a way or another, the idea of a tragic main character fighting his own shadow in a world that just doesn't seem to give him a break. Nakoshi is a man trapped in between two worlds. He lives in his car in front of an upper-class hotel he used to be a client of. Refusing his new state as a homeless man, he uses his car as a type of fortress, casting aside the other homeless in the park. Once his car is stowed, his sense of security is tainted, leaving him with no choice but to accept the advances of a young medical student who is conducting a research on trepanation. Trepanation is a procedure of drilling holes in a person's head, increasing the blood circulation and improving one's skull pressure in order to bring forth a person's sixth sense. And that's when things get really interesting. After the trepanation procedure is conducted, Nakoshi develops the ability to see through people's personas, gazing straight into their homunculi, or distortions. Those hidden traumas and scars we all carry in some way or another now are personified through imagetic symbolism for Nakoshi to see. A lifetime of trauma, abuse, and self-deceit revealed in plain sight. The interesting thing here is that Nakoshi is a jaded person. He's incapable to form any deeper bonds because he hasn't yet faced the demons of his past. He hasn't yet faced his weakness. And so each encounter with others homunculi serves as a way for us to deconstruct the persona that Nakoshi himself has created in order to conceal him from the world. As we dig deeper into his life, we learn that he once felt invisible to others, living life looking at his own feet, in complete ineptitude. He wasn't able to forge any higher purpose for himself because he was unable to overcome his shadow. He blamed his appearance for all his disgrace and the world for the superficiality of his own choices, failing to acknowledge his own vain inclinations, his own wrongdoings. And so to remedy his inner struggles, he resorts to an exterior solution. In order to be accepted by others, he changes his appearance, forging a completely different persona, reinventing his entire life. But old habits die hard, and they cannot always be replaced by endless waves of dopamine. All those symbols of luxury and power cannot seem to fill the void inside Nakoshi's heart. And so the success of Nakoshi's life hangs by the thread of self-delusion. His self-esteem and his accomplishments are a result of an exterior facade he crafted for himself, ready to be unveiled if anyone gets too close. And because Nakoshi is unable to look at his own interior, his band-aid solutions for his own mental state are exactly what they are: temporary fixes, superficial fixes. Similarly, Pum Pum moves through life passively. Like Nakoshi, he fails to see the gray areas of human interactions because he fails to check his own premises. Pum Pum never gets to truly forge a deep purpose in the course of his story, not because he's a victim of societal pressure or isolation, but more because he's a victim of his own mind. He never gets to go through the process of individuation because he's too caught up in an emotional down spiral. Fake smiles, parties, problems with girls, meaningless part-time jobs. Those are all distractions so Pum Pum can avoid to look within. The tragedy of Pum Pum rests in the fact that he is not a bad person, but a person that tricked himself to believe that he has no real agency over his future, instead growing increasingly obsessed with his own past or even trying to pretend to be someone he is not, just for a small moment of bliss. Maybe if I'm someone else, I won't feel the pain. Maybe if I'm someone else, my problems are going to go away. Maybe if someone can complete me, then I would finally be happy. It is not a coincidence that both mangas end in a similar and tragic dilemma. But differently from Nakoshi from Homunculus, what broke me in Pum Pum was that his idealized version of Aiko is what ultimately ends up failing her. By wanting to be seen and understood by her, in so many ways, he fails to truly see and understand her. She becomes not a person, but a projection of Pum Pum himself, a malformed version of his egotistical expectations. But it's important to remember that despite the tragic story arcs, both Pum Pum and Nakoshi were not always evil, but they were always dangerous. This is because they are both men who repress their own shadow self. They repress themselves so much that their life choices, or sometimes lack of choice, create a dissonant reality between who they wish to be and who they are, and this harsh truth is an abyss in itself. Nakoshi's fake lifestyle is not enough to fulfill his void, and if anything, makes it bigger and bigger. He can never forget he was living a superficial lie powered by everything he once despised. Pum Pum is quite different. His seemingly normal and mundane everyday life hides only his unfulfilled dreams and his failure to launch himself to the world in full potential. He is a mess of half commitments, half relationships, half promises, half accomplishments. He never seems to finish anything he starts, and he lacks in creative life force. Nakoshi lived his life looking down, not realizing he was choosing to isolate himself from others. He blamed others for not reaching out to him, but he never made the effort to reach out to others. He blamed society for only looking out for beauty and superficiality, but he himself only looked at women through their exterior. He wanted someone to look deep inside of him, but he wasn't willing to do the same to anyone. By failing to acknowledge the world around him, he wasn't able to form any substantial bond, eventually leading him to blame others for his own demise and to see himself as a cast aside. Characters that blame others instead of taking responsibility for their own actions are not new in Japanese pop culture. For to become integrated with your own shadow is to become aware of everything dangerous, inferior, grotesque, and even nasty about ourselves. And choosing to not act upon it, choosing to control all that. Both characters' inability to integrate their shadow is what causes the ultimate destruction of the ones they love the most. Their impotence towards themselves and their unawareness of the deep, darkest corners of their psyche is what causes them to explode in such drastic, violent acts. Pum Pum's impotence towards his own life and Nakoshi's powerlessness towards his own persona are the catalyst of such drastic and tumultuous twists in the stories. By not being aware of having a shadow, you declare a part of your personality to be non-existent. Then he enters the kingdom of the non-existent, which swells up and takes on enormous proportions. If you get rid of qualities you don't like by denying them, you become more and more unaware of what you are. You declare yourself more and more non-existent, and your devils will grow fatter and fatter. Most of us go to great lengths to protect our personas, to protect ourselves from anything unfamiliar or difficult, and so it's easier to stigmatize someone else. Pointing out others' flaws and downfalls is way easier than it is to acknowledge our own. We project onto others everything we bury deep within ourselves. But there is no light without shadow and no psychic holiness without imperfection. And so to cast aside our own shadow is ultimately to cast aside a part of us. And the consequences to this repression here are paid in an extremely high price. Good does not become better by being exaggerated, but worse and a small evil becomes a big one through being disregarded and repressed. The shadow is very much a part of human nature, and it is only a night that no shadow exists. The path to a greater character is not through perfection, but through holiness. In Berserk, Guts is the character that encapsulates this concept the best. He's an extremely dangerous man, but his stoic and intentional approach to life makes it so that the elements of his psyche that would be repressed are in his full command. For he is not a weak man, but a man that despite being in possession of his full aggression, is able to choose to be righteous. And we know this is not an easy thing for Guts, as we see him struggle time and time again throughout the manga. He is often pushed to his limits, and in so many ways, he relies on the support of the ones that love him to carry on. And although Guts goes through agonizing moments, we never see him give up in the face of adversity, because his true ferocity and power are not in his physical abilities, but in his strength of character. In all those three stories, we have a turning point of betrayal, a moment of complete devastation and desolation that taints forever the life of our characters. The turning point in which nothing is the same again. In Berserk, we have the eclipse, an unparalleled moment of dread and despair, where Guts and the Band of the Hawk are betrayed by the one they admire the most. The triumph of Guts lies exactly on the fact that he is not perfect. Guts is an amalgamation of trauma, hardship, and heartache, but he still chooses to do the right thing. He is completely aware of his undoings, and because of it, he is able to rise above it, stronger every time. In Oyasumi Punpun and Homunculus, the turning point feels like a punch in the stomach, because in so many ways we feel that Nakoshi and Punpun betray themselves. They betray what could have been. They fail the ones around them, because ultimately they fail themselves first. Despite of its weight, our shadow is a fundamental part of ourselves. A part not to conceal or repress, but to understand and conquer. For of all evil I deem you capable. Therefore I want the good from you. Verily, I have often laughed at the weaklings who thought themselves good because they had no claws.
We'd like to thank Mubi for sponsoring this video. Mubi is a curated streaming service, an ever-changing collection of hand-picked films from new directors to award winners from everywhere on earth. Beautiful, interesting, incredible movies, and always carefully chosen by Mubi curators. You can stream or download all of Mubi's movies anytime, on any screen, any device, anywhere. Now on Mubi, you can watch Kids Return by Takeshi Kitano. A coming-of-age turned upside down, the film deals with the thematics of masculinity and the dilemmas of the transitions between childhood and adulthood. It explores through magnetic pacing and stunning cinematography the universe of underground boxing and the Yakuza. Kids Return is one of Kitano's best films, and a definite must-watch if you're a fan of the late 90s aesthetic of Japanese cinema. Mubi is the perfect gateway to world cinema, and the only streaming platform the cinema cartography fully recommends. You can try Mubi for free for 30 days at mubi.com/cinemacartography for a whole month of great cinema for free.